Hello, friend. Welcome to Science for Sleep. Whether you have returned tonight or are finding this channel for the first time, this is a quiet place to slow down, learn something gentle, and let the day slowly fade into the background. Tonight, we are placing two familiar black birds beside one another. One is the American crow. Its scientific name is Corvus brachyrhynchos. The other is the common raven, Corvus corax. Both belong to the corvid family, a group that also includes jays, magpies, and several other highly adaptable birds. Both also belong to the genus Corvus, which is the scientific group containing the birds commonly called crows, ravens, and rooks. From a distance, the two can look almost identical. Each has dark feathers, a strong bill, broad wings, and a habit of watching the world from trees, rooftops, fence posts, and utility poles. But a closer look begins to separate them. A common raven is usually much larger. It can be about 60 centimeters long, with a wingspan that may reach roughly 1.3 meters. An American crow is often closer to 45 centimeters long, with a wingspan near 1 meter. The raven has a thick, curved bill and loose throat feathers that can look shaggy when it calls. Its voice is often a deep croak or rough knocking sound. The crow has a slimmer bill, smoother throat feathers, and the clearer call heard across farms, parks, and city streets. In flight, the raven's tail usually forms a wedge. The crow's tail opens into a rounded fan. And now, before we continue, if you enjoy calm science told slowly and clearly, you can subscribe to Science for Sleep. You can also leave a like if these quiet journeys help you relax. Now, let us return to the birds. A raven is not simply a crow that grew larger. Their close relationship gave them similar mental tools, but their bodies, foods, social lives, and surroundings have placed those tools under different kinds of pressure. American crows often live in family groups and spend years learning the details of one local area. They may recognize individual people, remember which humans once behaved dangerously, and react when those faces appear again. Other crows can learn from those alarm calls, even when they did not experience the original danger themselves. Common ravens face another kind of challenge. They often hide pieces of food for later. This behavior is called caching. A raven may change how it protects a cache depending on whether another bird was nearby and may have watched the hiding place. That means the problem is not only remembering where the food lies, it is also keeping track of who might share that information. Other members of the crow side bring yet more abilities into the comparison. The new Caledonian crow, Corvus moneguloides, can shape plant material into hooked tools. In laboratory tests, some have even joined separate pieces together to make one tool long enough to reach food. Ravens have succeeded in a different kind of task. They have chosen a useful tool or exchange token and kept it for an opportunity that would not arrive until many hours later. These abilities may sound human because they involve faces, tools, waiting, and hidden information. But the goal here is not to reward whichever bird behaves most like a person. A bird can be highly intelligent, while solving problems in a way that is very different from human thought. So the real comparison must be wider. Which bird remembers more useful information? Which one learns fastest from others? Which one handles physical problems more flexibly? Which can control an immediate impulse, prepare for a later need, or adjust when an old solution stops working? and which appears clever only because the test happens to match the life it already leads. The answer will not emerge from one trick or one dramatic experiment. It will come from placing memory, tool use, planning, social learning, numerical control, and adaptability beside one another. Even then, a problem remains. The words crow and raven do not describe two perfectly separate scientific teams. There are many species called crows, several called ravens, and some famous abilities belong to only one branch of that larger family. Before either bird can be called smarter, we need to know exactly which birds are being compared. Crow and raven are broad common labels applied to several different species. Both names appear within the genus Corvus. A genus is a scientific group made up of closely related species. Corvus contains more than 40 living species spread across much of the world. Some are commonly called crows. Several larger members are known as ravens. Other relatives carry names such as rook or jackdaw. These everyday labels grew from human habits of description. Large black species with heavy bills were often called ravens. Smaller species were more often called crows. No exact boundary based on size, ancestry, or behavior separates every crow from every raven. The rook, Corvus frugilegus, belongs to the same genus, even though its common name contains neither word. The hooded crow, Corvus cornix, has a pale grey body with a black head, wings, and tail. The fish crow, Corvus ossifragus, can look very similar to an American crow. Its shorter, more nasal call is often the easiest way to identify it. These birds share a long family history, yet each population has faced its own climate, food supply, predators, and social pressures. The main comparison here will remain clearly defined. The American crow is Corvus brachyrhynchos. It lives across most of the continental United States, southern Canada, and parts of northern Mexico. Its surroundings often include family territories, farms, suburbs, roads, city parks, and large seasonal roosts. The common raven is Corvus corax. Its range stretches across much of the northern hemisphere. Common ravens live in North America, Europe, Asia, northern Africa, and many Arctic regions. They are strongly associated with open country, mountains, forests, deserts, coastlines, and scattered food that may appear without warning. When habitat, family life, human recognition, or daily survival are compared, these are the two principal birds. Some famous experiments require other members of the same genus. The New Caledonian crow, Corvus moniduloides, lives on New Caledonia, a group of islands in the southwest Pacific Ocean. It is the crow known for shaping sticks and plant material into tools. Its natural tool behavior is so specialized that evidence from this species deserves a clear label every time it appears. An American crow cannot receive credit for a tool-making result produced by a New Caledonian crow. The carrion crow, Corvus coron, lives across much of Europe and Asia. Carrion crows have appeared in experiments involving working memory, which is the ability to hold and use information for a short time. They have also completed tests involving numerical control, where a bird must connect a signal with a particular number of actions. Other studies have examined whether carrion crows can recognize relationships between objects, instead of simply matching identical shapes. These findings reveal abilities present in particular birds from a particular species. They cannot automatically describe every crow living beside a North American road. The same care applies to ravens. a result from a small group of captive common ravens, can show that those birds performed a task under controlled conditions. Wild ravens vary in age, experience, hunger, social rank, and familiarity with people. One laboratory result provides evidence for a mental capacity, while leaving much of the species' natural variation unmeasured. This level of care may seem like a small detail, yet it changes the entire comparison. Natural selection works on real populations living in particular places. Across many generations, birds that handled local problems more successfully had a better chance of surviving and raising young. An American crow growing up among traffic, human faces, and stable family territories develops within a different stream of information from a raven searching wide landscapes for temporary food. Their shared ancestry provides a similar foundation. Daily experience and local survival pressures shape how that foundation is used. The comparison now has named species and clearer rules of evidence. It still lacks a single scale. Intelligence cannot be placed on a balance and measured in grams. Memory, planning, self-control, social learning, and physical problem-solving may produce different winners, even when the same two birds are tested. A fair comparison needs more than a single score. Intelligence is made of several abilities that can develop at different strengths inside the same animal. Long-term memory stores information for days, months, or even years. Working memory holds a smaller amount for only a few seconds while the animal uses it. Self-control, also called inhibitory control, allows a bird to resist an immediate action when waiting may bring a better result. Numerical cognition involves noticing or producing quantities. Technical skill includes selecting and shaping objects for use as tools. Social inference means using another animal's behavior, position, or past actions to judge what it may know. Communication carries information through calls and gestures. Behavioral flexibility allows an animal to change its strategy when familiar conditions stop producing the expected result. Strength in one area does not guarantee equal ability in another. The design of a test can also give one species an advantage before the experiment begins. New Caledonian crows naturally push tools into holes and crevices while searching for prey. A tool manufacturing task therefore connects closely with behavior that species performs in the wild. Common ravens regularly hide food and face competitors that may steal it. Experiments involving concealed food, watching rivals, and later retrieval fit problems ravens encounter during daily life. American crows often live near people and may remain within familiar territories for years. Tests involving dangerous human faces suit birds that repeatedly observe the same streets and residents. Scientists use the term ecological validity for this connection between an experiment and the conditions an animal normally experiences. Stronger ecological validity means the task resembles a meaningful problem from the animal's natural life. Laboratory control still matters. Researchers may use screens, barriers, colored shapes, exchange tokens, or unfamiliar containers so that one factor can change while the others remain stable. Those objects can create difficulties unrelated to the ability being measured. Some birds hesitate around a new apparatus. Others may distrust the person presenting it or struggle to see part of the setup from their normal head position. A bill can also make a task harder when the original design was created for fingers. Researchers studying common ravens adapted a group of cognition tests first used with great apes. 8 hand-raised ravens completed physical and social tasks. The physical work examined how they chose useful objects and followed hidden movement. Other trials tested whether the birds understood simple relationships between objects. Social trials measured responses to human cues and other available information. Equipment and response methods were adjusted so the ravens could answer with their bills. Their results were later compared with published findings from chimpanzees and orangutans. Such comparisons require care because the animals had different bodies, training histories, living conditions, and reasons for participating. Success can also arise through more than one mental route. One possibility is understanding a relationship between cause and effect. Repeated experience may instead teach that a certain choice usually produces food. A simple rule, such as selecting the heavier object, can solve a problem without revealing complete knowledge of the physical system. Rapid association remains a useful cognitive skill. Efficient rules can save time and energy in the wild. The difficult part is determining which process produced the visible answer. Motivation changes performance as well. A hungry raven may work longer for food than one that has recently eaten. An experienced crow may approach a human-operated device more readily than a wild bird seeing it for the first time. Sightlines, reward preference, earlier training, and body design can all affect the result. The comparison therefore needs several kinds of evidence. Places and individual faces can reveal different forms of memory. Tool choice and construction can expose physical problem solving. Delayed rewards help measure planning and self-control. Social experiments show how information moves between birds, or how one bird responds to another bird's possible viewpoint. Each finding adds one part to a wider cognitive profile. No single performance can carry the full weight of the word smarter. Before those abilities can be compared in detail, their physical foundation deserves attention. A crow's brain may be small enough to fit inside a human palm, yet its internal organization allows millions of nerve cells to exchange information with remarkable speed. Inside that compact skull, the brain is arranged very differently from a human brain. For many years, the phrase bird brain was used as an insult. It reflected an old assumption that a small brain must support only simple behavior. Modern neuroscience has replaced that idea with a much more detailed picture. Mammals have a 6-layered outer brain region called the neocortex. This layer is involved in memory, decision-making, sensory processing, and many other complex tasks. Birds do not have a neocortex built in that same 6-layered pattern. Their forebrain follows a different design. A major part of that design is called the pallium. The pallium is a broad group of forebrain regions that helps a bird combine what it sees and hears with memory, choice, and action. When a crow recognizes a face, remembers a hidden location, or changes its behavior after watching another bird, several parts of this system are working together. The small size of the brain can be misleading because brain mass does not reveal how many nerve cells are packed inside it. Nerve cells are called neurons. Each neuron receives and sends signals through connections with other cells. In 2016, researchers compared neuron numbers across many bird and mammal species. They found that parrots and songbirds, the larger group that includes crows and ravens, had about twice as many neurons as primate brains of the same mass on average. A bird brain weighing only a few grams can therefore contain the processing power expected in a much heavier mammal brain. Corvids and parrots also place a large share of their neurons in the pallial forebrain. That concentration matters because these regions support flexible choices, memory, and the combining of several kinds of information. Two areas called the mesopallium and nidopallium are especially important. Their names sound technical, though their basic role is easier to picture. They act as major association regions. An association region brings different streams of information together. A sound can be linked with a face. The position of arrival can be linked with the location of food. A present object can be connected with an event expected hours later. Comparative studies have found that the corvid species examined carried roughly twice as many neurons in the mesopallium and nidopallium as the non-corvid birds used for comparison. Those other birds included species such as chickens, pigeons, and ostriches. The result helps explain how a compact corvid brain can support many flexible behaviors without copying the structure of a primate brain. Some large-brained corvids possess forebrain neuron totals comparable with those of much larger primates. That does not create a direct intelligence score. Neuron number is only one part of the system. The way neurons are connected can affect how quickly information moves and which regions communicate. Development also matters, because young birds build skills through play, family contact, practice, and exposure to local conditions. Sensory specialization changes the information entering the brain. A raven's wide field of view and a crow's close attention to human movement shape the problems each bird can detect. Brain chemicals influence attention, motivation, stress, and learning. Past experience changes which connections become stronger and which responses are likely to be repeated. These differences lead to a broader idea called convergent evolution. Convergent evolution occurs when separate evolutionary paths produce similar abilities. Birds and mammals inherited very different brain plans from distant ancestors. Over millions of years, both lineages developed systems capable of working memory, planning, social learning, and flexible decisions. A raven does not need a human-shaped brain to prepare for a future event. A crow does not need a primate cortex to recognize a dangerous face. Their abilities grew from an avian design refined for flight, sharp vision, rapid movement, and complex social life. The basic neural equipment is impressive on both sides of the comparison. The clearest differences may appear in how that equipment is used. An American crow growing up among roads, families, and familiar people receives one kind of training from the world. A common raven searching large landscapes for scattered food receives another. An American crow often grows up inside a landscape that becomes deeply familiar. Its home may include a row of houses, a school field, several mature trees, a parking lot, and a road crossed by hundreds of vehicles each day. Food appears in regular places. Earthworms rise through wet lawns after rain. Insects gather around lights during warm evenings. Garbage bins reach the curb on a weekly schedule. Farm machinery disturbs soil and exposes seeds, beetles, and small animals. The crow can return to these places again and again. Many American crows live within cooperative family groups. A breeding pair may share its territory with young from earlier years. These older offspring sometimes help defend the nest and feed younger birds. The family can preserve local knowledge across several breeding seasons. One bird discovers a safe feeding site. Another hears its calls and follows. Young crows watch adults react to hawks, cats, people, and unfamiliar objects. The territory gradually becomes a detailed network of useful information. Individual humans can become part of that network. A person who regularly leaves food may be treated differently from someone who once approached a nest or captured a bird. Traffic also contains patterns. Cars gather and separate. Pedestrians move through intersections. Quiet gaps appear between louder periods. A crow that learns these rhythms gains access to food while reducing the danger of crossing a road. During winter, many families leave their daytime territories and travel toward communal roosts. These shared sleeping areas can contain hundreds, thousands, or sometimes tens of thousands of birds. The route may be repeated each evening for weeks or months. Stable landmarks help guide the journey. The common raven often works across a broader and less predictable landscape. A pair may defend cliffs, forest edges, mountain valleys, tundra, desert country, or stretches of coast. Food can be separated by many kilometers. Some sources appear briefly. A deer carcass beside a road may feed several scavengers for a few days. A dead seal on a beach can attract gulls, eagles, foxes, and ravens. Once the remains are consumed or removed, the opportunity disappears. Ravens often search from the air. Their broad wings allow efficient soaring over open ground. A circling eagle, a group of scavenging birds, or the movement of wolves can reveal food that would be difficult to locate from the ground. The raven must notice these clues, travel toward them, and judge the danger surrounding the site. A territorial pair may reach the food first. Younger ravens often travel in changing groups of non-breeding birds. These gatherings can form around a carcass and break apart when the food is gone. The individuals present today may differ from those seen several days earlier. Rank, aggression, and previous encounters affect who feeds and who waits. Surplus food can be carried away and hidden. The bird may later return to a small patch of soil, grass, snow, or stones that looked ordinary when the food was buried. Other ravens may have watched. A fox may have searched the area. Weather may have changed the surface. The raven's success depends on memory, careful timing, and control over information. Both species can live near people. Ravens visit landfills, farms, roadsides, docks, and campsites. American crows also occupy forests, wetlands, open fields, and quiet rural country. Their differences are patterns of emphasis rather than fixed boundaries. Crow intelligence often develops around repeated relationships. Familiar places, known family members, human routines, and seasonal travel can be studied over long periods. Raven intelligence often develops around opportunities that are scattered and temporary. A useful event may appear once, attract strong competition, and vanish within days. Natural selection favors mental abilities that reduce the uncertainty surrounding these conditions. Stable local systems reward detailed knowledge accumulated over years. Temporary food rewards rapid discovery, secure memory, and strategic concealment. Neither setting offers an easy life. Cities contain traffic, noise, glass, wires, and constant disturbance. Open landscapes contain distance, severe weather, uncertain food, and competitors that arrive without warning. The two birds begin with closely related brains. Their surroundings repeatedly ask those brains to perform different work. Both ways of living depend on information surviving after the original sight, sound, or event has passed. That stored information becomes the first direct measure of how each bird understands its world. The surroundings of a crow or raven are filled with places that matter for different reasons. A tall tree may hold a nest in spring and serve as a safe lookout later in the year. A roadside can offer food during a quiet moment, then become dangerous when traffic returns. Spatial memory allows a bird to keep these relationships after the original scene has changed. This kind of memory reaches beyond the picture stored inside the brain. It connects landmarks, routes, food, shelter, danger, and timing. A landmark is a stable feature that helps an animal rebuild a location. It might be the edge of a forest, a large boulder, a utility pole, or the bend of a creek. Common ravens use this ability whenever they store food. A stored food item intended for later recovery is called a cache. When a carcass provides more meat than a raven can eat, the bird may tear away a piece and carry it several hundred meters from the feeding site. The food can be pushed beneath snow, tucked under moss, covered with soil, hidden among stones, or placed behind loose bark. One carcass may lead to many separate caches. Each location must remain useful after the raven leaves. The surface rarely stays unchanged. Wind smooths tracks across snow. Rain darkens soil and flattens grass. Leaves shift, scavengers pass through, and fresh footprints appear. A raven returning hours or days later cannot depend on one perfect visual image. Stable features around the site help reconstruct the hidden point. The slope of the ground may line up with a rock. A tree trunk may stand a certain distance from the cache. The position of a ridge or stream can narrow the search further. Birds use a brain system involving the hippocampus to support this kind of spatial memory. The hippocampus is a region strongly involved in remembering places and the relationships among them. Its work allows present sites to reactivate information stored during an earlier visit. Raven memory must often handle several layers at once. The bird may remember one exact hiding place. It may also keep track of many caches scattered across a wider area. Timing matters because some food spoils, freezes, or becomes easier to reach under changing conditions. The presence of an observer adds a social layer, since another raven may carry the same location in memory. American crows build a different kind of internal map. A family territory may be used through several seasons and sometimes across many years. The birds learn dependable feeding lawns, nest trees, safe perches, and routes between them. Human activity becomes part of the map. A schoolyard may be quiet on weekends. A restaurant parking lot may offer scraps after a certain hour. A road can become safer during a repeating gap in traffic. Neighboring crow territories also have boundaries that affect where a bird can feed without provoking a chase. Escape routes matter when a hawk appears. Seasonal travel adds another scale. During colder months, American crows may leave daytime territories and follow familiar corridors toward communal roosts. The route can include river valleys, rail lines, wooded strips, or rows of tall buildings. Young birds can learn parts of this geography by moving with parents and older relatives. The raven's memory often spreads across temporary food sites. The crow's memory can grow dense within a stable local world. One system may contain dozens of hidden items. The other may preserve years of repeated movement through the same neighborhood. Neither pattern creates an easy winner. Both birds turn present details into access points for older information. A stone can mark buried food. A rooftop can signal safety. A road may carry a known rhythm. The landscape, therefore, holds more than its visible shape. It carries a private history of where something happened, when it mattered, and who else may have been there. That history becomes especially powerful when danger is tied to a living individual whose face can appear again. A familiar landscape can contain more than safe trees and reliable feeding places. It can also contain individual people. For an American crow, a human face may become part of the local map. Researchers near Seattle, Washington, tested whether wild crows could separate one threatening person from the many other people passing through the same area. The work took place at 5 different sites. At each location, between 7 and 15 American crows were trapped for a short period. The birds were measured, fitted with identification bands, and released. During the capture, the researchers wore a distinctive rubber mask. Its unusual face created a stable visual pattern that the crows could encounter again later. The mask became linked with an unpleasant event. After the birds had been released, researchers returned to the same areas while wearing that face. No traps were present during these later visits. The persons simply walked along a set route while the surrounding crows were observed. Previously captured birds often responded with loud scolding calls. Some flew closer and followed the masked person from tree to tree. Others joined a mob. Mobbing is a group defense behavior in which birds gather around a possible threat, call repeatedly, and sometimes make close passes to drive it away. Control masks produced a much weaker response. Those faces had not been present during the capture. The crows were therefore reacting to a particular collection of features, rather than treating every nearby person as equally dangerous. Human facial recognition relies on the spacing and shape of several features. A crow does not need to identify those features in the same way a person does. Its brain only needs to detect a visual pattern that remains stable enough to predict danger. This process is called associative recognition. An association forms when one event becomes reliably connected with another. The sight of the mask had been paired with capture, handling, and temporary restraint. When the same face appeared again, the stored connection activated a warning response. Such learning can save an animal from repeating a costly mistake. Avoiding every human would require constant alarm and would block access to food found around parks, streets, and buildings. Treating all people as safe would expose the bird to repeated danger. Individual recognition allows a more precise response. A harmless pedestrian can pass beneath the tree without causing much concern. The dangerous face receives close attention. This ability should not be described as a human-style grudge. A crow does not need to replay the capture as a personal story or imagine revenge. Recognition can work through memory, emotion, and learned prediction. The face signals that a harmful event may occur again. Long-term studies have shown that American crows can retain dangerous face memories for years. That length of time matters for a bird living in a stable territory. The same person may use the same path across many seasons. A face learned during one encounter can remain useful long after the trap has disappeared. Common ravens can also distinguish familiar people. Captive ravens learn which humans provide care, which ones handle them, and which individuals have behaved in threatening ways. Wild ravens also spend enough time around farms, roadsides, campsites, and research stations to build memories of particular people. The Seattle experiments remain especially valuable because they followed free living American crows inside an ordinary human landscape. The birds were surrounded by strangers every day. Even within that movement, one face remained meaningful. A person walking below a crow's perch may therefore enter a history that began months or years earlier. The human sees a black bird in a tree. The crow may see a known individual connected with a specific outcome. Something even more remarkable began to happen around the study sites. Birds that had never entered the traps also started scolding the dangerous face. The memory was moving beyond the crows that had experienced the original event. An untrapped crow can learn about danger without ever touching the trap. Its information begins with the behavior of birds that were present during the original capture. A crow wearing identification bands may spot the dangerous mask and begin calling from a tree. Nearby, birds hear the sharp scolding sounds and turn toward the same person. Some approach more closely. Others follow as the masked figure continues along the route. The group's attention reveals where the danger is and how seriously experienced birds are treating it. This form of learning carries far less risk than first-hand experience. The trapped crow gained precise information, but it paid for that knowledge through capture, handling, and temporary restraint. A watching bird can remain safely above the ground while learning from the response. The information may be less detailed. It still provides a useful warning. Researchers studying the dangerous masks around Seattle found that the response did not remain limited to the original birds. Crows that had never been captured also scolded people wearing the threatening face. At one study location, the alarm response spread at least 1.2 kilometers from the original capture area over 5 years. The proportion of crows reacting to the mask also increased as time passed. This movement of information between companions and nearby adults is called horizontal transmission. The word horizontal refers to knowledge passing between individuals living at roughly the same time. A crow watches another crow react and adjusts its own behavior. Shared alarm calls make this process especially efficient. A calling bird attracts attention to a specific place. Its posture and flight direction add further clues. When several birds gather around the same person, the coordinated response becomes difficult for nearby crows to ignore. American crow families create many opportunities for this kind of learning. Older offspring often remain near their parents after reaching full size. Some stay for more than one breeding season and help defend the territory or feed younger nestlings. Several generations may therefore encounter the same roads, predators, feeding sites, and individual humans. Young birds pay close attention to adult reactions while their own experience is still limited. A juvenile hearing its parents scold may join the group before it fully understands what caused the alarm. Repeated encounters gradually connect the face with the family's response. Knowledge passing from older birds to younger ones is called vertical transmission. This process allows a warning to survive beyond the birds that first acquired it. A young crow may react to a dangerous face years after the original trapping event, because its parents preserved the response through their behavior. The information can become broader as it moves. A captured bird experienced the exact combination of mask, trap, handling, and release. A socially informed crow may know only that trusted companions react strongly when this person appears. That difference can affect accuracy. First-hand learning tends to produce a clearer link between one face and one event. Social learning may create a more cautious rule based on the reactions of others. Both routes have value. Precise information helps a bird avoid wasting energy on harmless people. Social information allows many birds to gain protection without experiencing the danger personally. When a learned response continues because birds repeatedly acquire it from one another. Scientists may describe it as an animal tradition. A tradition does not require spoken instruction. No adult crow needs to explain the mask or demonstrate a formal lesson. Attention, repeated alarm behavior, and family contact can keep the response active within the local population. The American crow gains its first clear advantage here. Its knowledge of a dangerous human can become distributed across a neighborhood. The memory no longer depends entirely on one bird remaining alive or meeting the same person again. A group can preserve part of its local history through shared behavior. That kind of social intelligence explains how crows learn whom to avoid. Physical objects create a different test, where success depends on understanding how an action changes the material world. A physical puzzle removes the warning calls, familiar faces, and family reactions that guided the crows before. The bird now faces an object that responds only to weight, movement, and contact. One well-known test was inspired by an ancient story often called Aesop's fable of the crow and the pitcher. In the story, a thirsty bird drops stones into a container until the water rises within reach. Researchers created a laboratory version using a clear vertical tube. A small piece of food floated on the water, too far below the opening for the crow to reach with its bill. Nearby objects could be dropped into the tube. Each sinking object occupied space and pushed some of the water upward. This process is called displacement. A large solid object usually moves more water than a small object of the same material. A hollow object may contain air and float, reducing how much water it displaces below the surface. The reward rose a little higher after every useful choice. Several new Caledonian crows learned to solve versions of this task. When given a water-filled tube and a tube containing sand, the birds tended to place objects into the water. Dropping a stone into sand did not lift the reward. The crows also preferred objects that sank over objects that floated. Solid pieces were chosen more often than hollow ones. A tube with a higher starting water level was usually selected over one with a lower level, because fewer objects were needed to bring the food within reach. These choices match several useful properties of the apparatus. The harder versions produced a less complete pattern. In one test, the birds could choose between a narrow tube and a wider tube. The narrow tube should have been more efficient, because the same object would raise its water level farther. The crows did not consistently favor the narrow option. Another experiment used a U-shaped apparatus. A visible tube containing the reward was secretly connected below the surface to one of two nearby tubes. Objects dropped into the connected tube raised the reward. Objects placed into the unconnected tube had no effect, even though both openings looked similar from above. The crows struggled when this important connection was hidden. Earlier studies had also shown that new Caledonian crows did not immediately begin dropping stones the first time they encountered the task. They learned quickly after exploring the equipment and seeing the reward move. As trials continued, their choices became more useful. That improvement can be explained in several ways. The bird may understand that sinking objects raise water, It may learn that certain objects produce visible movement in the reward. A simple rule, such as choosing heavy pieces, can also guide successful behavior across several trials. The correct action alone does not reveal which explanation operated inside the bird's brain. Scientists therefore add control conditions. A control changes one important part of the setup, while keeping most other details similar. Sand tests whether the bird simply enjoys dropping objects into a tube. Floating pieces test whether it notices that some objects fail to raise the water. The hidden connection examines whether the bird follows an unseen physical relationship. These comparisons help separate broad causal understanding from habits learned through feedback. A later analysis combined results from many Corvid studies using Aesop-style tasks. The overall pattern showed a strong role for trial and error learning. Success often improved as birds experienced which actions moved the food closer. The task could not cleanly prove that the animals understood the entire physical system in an abstract way. This finding does not make the performance unimportant. Rapid learning from feedback can be extremely useful in nature. A bird that quickly remembers which branch bends safely, which shell breaks on a hard surface, or which object moves food closer, gains a practical advantage. Such learning requires attention, memory, and the ability to update behavior after an outcome. The crows solve genuine problems. The uncertain part concerns the mental route that produced the solution. Physical behavior becomes easier to interpret when it appears inside the animal's ordinary life. For one crow species, tool use is woven into daily feeding, supported by a bill shaped for holding and guiding slender objects. One crow species gives physical problem solving a much firmer place in daily life. The New Caledonian crow, Corvus moneguloides, lives on New Caledonia, a group of islands in the southwest Pacific Ocean. This is a different bird from the American crow at the center of our comparison. Its abilities should remain attached to its own species. New Caledonian crows search for insects and other small animals hidden inside wood, leaf litter, and narrow crevices. Their bills cannot always reach the prey directly. A slender object can extend that reach. The birds use twigs, stiff leaf stems, and strips cut from the edges of tough leaves. Some tools remain straight. Others end in small hooks that help catch a larva or pull it from a tunnel. A crow may remove side branches from a twig, shorten the shaft, or shape the working end before using it. Tool choice also depends on the opening. A deep hole may require a longer piece. A narrow tunnel may need something thin enough to enter without bending. The bird must hold the tool at a useful angle and guide its tip toward prey that may be hidden from direct view. Its body helps with this work. The upper bill of a New Caledonian crow is relatively short and deep. Its lower edge is straighter than the more curved edge found in many other crows. The lower bill is strong and slightly turned upward near the tip. Together, these features create a firm grip around a stick. Researchers sometimes call this a precision grip. The phrase means that the bird can hold a tool securely while making small, controlled movements. A human hand can pinch an object between a finger and thumb. The crow achieves control with two parts of its bill pressing against the shaft. The shape also helps the tool remain within view. Many birds hold an object so that part of the bill or head blocks the working tip. The New Caledonian crow's bill allows it to angle a tool forward while watching the area where the tip enters the hole. Visual guidance is important because a small movement at the bill can shift the far end of a long tool by several centimeters. The bill must also resist forces that ordinary feeding does not create. A tool can catch against bark or become wedged inside a crevice. The bird may pull, twist, or push without losing its grip. A deeper upper bill and strengthened lower bill help control those forces. Anatomy alone does not produce a skilled tool user. A young crow still needs practice. It handles objects, explores possible materials, and gradually improves its movements. Young birds can watch adults and examine tools that others have made. They may gain useful information about shape and material through those experiences. The final tool can still reflect the bird's own choices and adjustments, rather than an exact copy of one adult example. This combination of body and learning is sometimes called embodied cognition. The term means that thought works through the abilities and limits of a living body. The brain selects a material and estimates its useful length. The eyes guide the tip. The bill controls the shaft and provides feedback when the tool strikes wood or touches prey. Failure produces new information. A stick that bends too easily may be abandoned. A piece that cannot enter the opening may be trimmed or replaced. A successful tool becomes worth carrying to another hole. The crow's technical skill, therefore, belongs to an entire working system. Its brain, vision, bill shape, experience, and island environment all contribute. This makes its behavior more than a clever response to a laboratory box. Tool use forms part of the bird's normal way of finding food. Natural specialization still leaves room for a more difficult achievement. A wild twig already exists as one usable object. A bird faces a different kind of challenge when every available piece is too short, and the useful tool must first be assembled from separate parts. Inside a clear box, a small piece of food rested in a narrow track. The opening was too small for the crow's head. A long tool could reach the reward, and the birds had already learned how that part worked. The new problem came from the objects placed nearby. Each piece was too short. Some were solid rods, others were hollow tubes. A solid piece could slide into the open end of a hollow one, creating a longer tool. No finished tool was provided. The useful object had to be made before it could be used. Researchers tested 8 adult New Caledonian crows that had never been shown how to join the pieces. These birds were experimentally naive, meaning they had no previous experience with this exact construction task. 4 of the 8 solved it. They picked up one component, fitted it into another, and carried the longer compound tool to the box. The first successful constructions appeared quickly. For the birds that solved the problem, the initial success came after roughly 4 to 6 minutes of handling the parts. That short period matters because the birds had not spent days receiving step-by-step training. They explored the pieces, encountered the limits of each one, and produced a new arrangement that reached farther. The task required several linked decisions. A crow first had to notice that one piece could not cover the distance. The 2 components then had to be matched by shape. The solid end needed to enter the hollow opening. Enough force had to be applied to hold the joint together. After construction, the bird still had to transport the longer object without pulling it apart. The completed tool then had to pass through the narrow opening and move the food along the track. Each action supported a larger goal. Scientists sometimes call these smaller actions sub-goals. A sub-goal is one step that becomes useful because it helps produce a later result. Joining the parts served as an intermediate step. Its value appeared after the finished tool was carried to the box and used successfully. The researchers also changed the reward's position. Sometimes the food sat close enough for a single piece to reach it. In other trials, the reward was farther away. The crows constructed compound tools more often when the extra length was actually needed. That pattern suggests that joining pieces was connected with the distance to the food, rather than becoming a fixed action repeated during every trial. One bird carried the experiment even farther. His name was Mango. When a two-piece tool could no longer reach the reward, Mango joined additional components. He produced working tools made from 3 pieces and later from 4. This form of construction is sometimes called recursive because one compound object becomes a component in a still larger structure. Mango had to preserve the earlier joint while adding another part. The longer tool also became harder to control. A small movement near the bill caused a larger movement at the distant tip. Every added connection created another point that could bend, loosen, or separate. The final tool still had to remain straight enough to enter the opening and strong enough to move the food. Researchers recorded the sequence of actions and the conditions under which construction occurred. The bird's internal image of the finished tool remained inaccessible. Rapid trial and error may have contributed. The birds may also have understood some relationship between length, connection, and reach. The result remains important under either explanation. 4 crows created a functional object from parts that were individually useless for the distant reward. Mango extended that ability across several connected steps. The crow lineage reaches a major technical peak here. A natural stick already has length. These birds created length by combining separate objects. Their solution existed only after they built it. The food remained visible throughout the task, giving every action an immediate direction. Raven planning becomes most revealing when the useful object must be chosen, while the future problem is still hours away. Several hours can pass between a raven's choice and the moment that choice becomes useful. Food caching already carries information across time. A raven hides meat during the morning and may return after sunset or several days later. Researchers have treated this behavior cautiously because caching is a normal part of raven life. Natural selection may have given ravens specialized rules for storing food without giving them a general ability to prepare for unfamiliar future events. A bird might hide food whenever it has more than it can eat. That rule would work well without requiring the raven to picture a later hunger or mentally rehearse its return. To separate flexible planning from ordinary caching, researchers created tasks involving objects that ravens do not normally store in the wild. One experiment involved a tool. The ravens first learned that a particular object could open a puzzle apparatus containing food. The tool only worked when inserted into a certain part of the device. Later, the apparatus was removed from sight. The birds were then offered several objects. One was the useful tool. The others were distractors with no future purpose. A distractor is an object included to test whether the animal recognizes the useful item rather than choosing at random. At the moment of selection, the correct tool could not open anything. The apparatus was absent, and no immediate reward could be reached. Its value depended on an opportunity that would arrive later. The ravens often selected the functional tool and kept it until the apparatus became available again. A second task replaced the tool with a token. The token had no practical use by itself. It could not open a box or be eaten. During training, the ravens learned that giving this object to a human experimenter would produce a food reward. This kind of exchange is often called bartering. After learning the arrangement, the birds were offered the useful token among objects that could not be exchanged. The person who accepted the token was unavailable at the time of selection. The raven therefore had to choose an object for a later meeting and preserve it until the exchange became possible. Some trials used delays reaching 17 hours. A bird choosing during one part of the day might not use the object until the following day. Across that interval, the apparatus remained absent, and the token remained inedible. The chosen object had current value because of an event outside the raven's immediate view. The experiments also changed how long the birds had to wait. This helped test whether the ravens were merely repeating a recently rewarded action or adjusting their choices according to the distance of the future opportunity. Their performance provided evidence of flexible planning in tasks separate from natural food storage. The wording needs to remain careful. A successful raven does not prove that the bird experiences tomorrow through an inner story resembling human thought. Its brain may represent the future through learned relationships among an object, a delay, and an expected result. Associative learning could contribute as well. A raven may learn that keeping one object reliably leads to food after a familiar sequence of events. Even so, the action extends beyond simple attraction to what is useful now. The bird must recognize the future function of one object while rejecting nearby alternatives. It must also retain possession of the useful item while no apparatus or exchange partner is present. The new Caledonian crow in the compound tool experiment faced visible food and visible materials. Its challenge involved joining short pieces into a longer tool that could solve a present problem. The raven faced a different structure. The useful problem had disappeared. The correct object mattered because of an event expected many hours later. Future planning begins when a later opportunity changes a present decision. An ordinary item gains value through the result it may produce after time has passed. That link between present choice and delayed outcome gives the common raven one of its strongest advantages in the comparison. A plan still depends on action in the present. When a smaller reward is already available, preserving the future may require the bird to hold back from taking it. An object chosen for tomorrow can lose its value in a single impulsive moment. Self-control helps prevent that loss. Researchers often call this ability inhibitory control. It allows an animal to hold back from an immediate action when waiting may produce a better result. The challenge sounds simple until food is already visible. A small reward can be eaten now. A preferred reward may arrive later. The bird must keep the delayed outcome active in memory while resisting what is directly in front of its bill. New Caledonian crows have faced this problem in experiments using a rotating tray. The tray moves steadily past an opening where the bird could reach the food. One reward arrived first. A second reward followed after a delay. Taking the first item ended the trial, so the crow had to let it pass if it wanted the later option. Children between 3 and 5 years old completed a similar version of the task. The comparison did not mean that a crow possessed the mind of a child at a certain age. Researchers used the same basic problem to examine how two very different species handled an immediate temptation. Some trials tested food quality. The first item was less desirable, while the delayed item was a food the subject strongly preferred. For a crow, the difference might involve two familiar foods with clearly different value. The better reward gave the bird a strong reason to wait. Other trials tested quantity. The immediate option contained a small amount of one food. Waiting produced more pieces of that same food. The physical difference was easy to see, yet the added quantity did not always create the same pull as a preferred flavor. Both the children and the crows generally waited more successfully when the delayed reward offered better quality. Performance was weaker when waiting produced only a larger amount of the same item. The result shows that self-control depends partly on how the animal values the outcome. Two extra pieces may matter less than one especially desirable piece. The delay remains the same, while the strength of the future reward changes. The crows still performed above chance in the main quality and quantity conditions. Their choices showed more than random grabbing. They sometimes allowed an available reward to move out of reach and waited for the later one. The experiment became harder when visibility changed. In some trials, the birds could not watch every part of the baiting process as clearly. They had to remember where each reward had been placed and follow its movement around the apparatus. Their performance declined under these conditions. Difficulty tracking the setup may have weakened their confidence about what would arrive later. A bird can show strong self-control in a clearly understood task and struggle when the future reward becomes uncertain. Trust matters for the same reason. Waiting is more useful when experience has shown that the delayed reward will actually appear. An unfamiliar device or an inconsistent human experimenter can make an immediate choice seem safer. Hunger also changes the balance. A bird that has eaten recently may tolerate delay more easily than one facing an urgent need for energy. Familiarity with exchange tasks can influence performance as well. A raven trained to trade a token may understand the sequence quickly. A wild bird encountering the same procedure for the first time may spend much of the trial learning what the person expects. Self-control therefore changes with reward preference, visibility, earlier experience, and physical condition. It cannot be treated as a fixed amount stored inside the brain. The immediate reward creates sensory pressure through its sight and proximity. The later reward draws strength from memory and expectation. Behavior emerges from the balance between them. This unevenness makes corvid intelligence more realistic. A bird capable of planning many hours ahead can still make an impulsive choice. A skilled problem solver can fail when the apparatus hides an important detail. Waiting becomes even more complicated when the saved reward lies outdoors, and another raven may remember exactly where it was hidden. A carcass can provide far more food than one raven can eat at once. A deer killed beside a road may remain available for several days. In colder regions, the body of an elk, caribou, or sheep can last longer, especially when low temperatures slow decay. The supply still attracts competition quickly. Other ravens may arrive within hours. Eagles, foxes, coyotes, and wolves can remove large amounts of food. A territorial pair may also defend the carcass and drive younger birds away. Carrying food elsewhere gives a raven more control over what happens to it. The bird tears off a piece, flies away from the feeding site, and hides it for later recovery. This behavior is called caching. When food is divided among many separate hiding places, researchers call it scatter caching. One piece may be pressed into soft soil. Another can disappear beneath moss, snow, grass, loose bark, or a small stone. Distributing the food reduces the risk of losing everything at one exposed site. Distance matters. A cache made only a few meters from a carcass can be easier for competitors to notice. Flying farther costs energy, though it may place the food beyond the activity surrounding the main feeding area. Cover also changes the risk. Tall vegetation can hide the raven's movements. Fresh snow may conceal the food well, yet tracks leading toward the spot can leave a visible trail. Disturbed soil, bent grass, or shifted leaves can reveal where the bill entered the ground. The bird making the cache is called the cacher. A nearby bird watching the event is an observer. The observer may see the exact point where the food disappears. That opportunity to see is called visual access. A rock, tree trunk, slope, or screen of vegetation can block visual access even when the observer remains nearby. Once the cacher leaves, the watching raven may return to the hiding place. Taking stored food from another animal is called pilfering. Successful pilfering depends on attention and memory. The observer must notice the placement, preserve the location, and return when the owner can no longer interfere. The identity of the watcher also matters. A dominant raven may approach the cache openly because it can drive the owner away. A lower-ranking bird may wait until the area becomes quiet. Familiar individuals carry histories of earlier encounters. A raven that has stolen food before may receive closer attention than one that has shown little interest in caches. Previous experience as a thief can also affect the cacher's own behavior. A bird familiar with pilfering knows how much useful information a watcher can gain from a few seconds of observation. Sometimes the owner returns to its cache, removes the food, and hides it somewhere else. This is called recaching. The first location may have seemed secure when the food was placed. Its value changes if another raven watched the act or remained in view. Moving the item restores some privacy. The new hiding place can be farther away, better covered, or chosen after the observer has left. A cache, therefore, contains more than stored calories. Its value depends on who knows where it is. Scientists describe this difference as information asymmetry. The phrase means that one individual possesses useful information that another individual lacks. A raven gains an advantage when it knows the location of food, while its competitors do not. That advantage shrinks as more birds watch the placement. The food itself may remain buried beneath an ordinary patch of ground. Knowledge of the location can exist inside several birds at once. One remembers hiding it. Another remembers watching. A third may know only that activity occurred somewhere nearby. The landscape carries none of these differences on its surface. A quiet snow patch can hold a private store, a shared memory, or a future contest. Visible rivals clearly influence how ravens protect food. A more difficult test begins when the competitor cannot be seen, yet may still have had a way to watch. Researchers tested this problem with two adjoining rooms separated by a wooden wall. The wall contained two large windows. Each window could be covered so that a raven in one room could no longer see directly into the other. Small peepholes had been drilled into the window covers. A peephole could remain open while the larger window stayed blocked. This created a narrow line of sight between the rooms. Before the main experiment began, the ravens were allowed to use that opening themselves. A bird could stand beside an open peephole and watch another raven hide food in the neighboring room. Through this experience, the birds learned something practical about the structure. An open hole allowed sight across the wall. A closed hole blocked it. The main test then removed every visible competitor. One raven entered the caching room and received food to hide. The windows remained covered. No head, eye, or body could be seen in the adjoining space. Recorded raven sounds were played from the other room, making another bird seem present behind the wall. The sound stayed the same while the peephole changed. During some trials, the small opening was closed. In others, it remained open. The cacher could not see a rival through the hole from its own position. Its earlier experience had shown that a raven standing in the neighboring room could use that opening to watch. 9 common ravens completed the main comparison. Researchers measured how long each bird took to finish hiding its food. They also counted how often the raven returned to a cache and adjusted it after the first placement. These later visits are sometimes called cache improvements. A bird may push the food deeper, add more covering, or move it slightly after noticing that the first hiding place seems exposed. The ravens behaved differently when the peephole was open. They completed their caching more quickly. They also returned to improve the hiding places less often. This pattern resembled their behavior when a real competitor had been visibly present. Finishing quickly reduces the amount of time available for observation. Fewer later visits can also protect the location, because every return may draw attention back to the hidden food. When the peephole was closed, the same recorded raven sounds produced a weaker response. The difference could not be explained by hearing a rival alone. The wall, the opening, and the raven's earlier experience changed what the sound meant. The birds appeared to combine several pieces of information. Another raven seemed to be nearby. An open peephole connected the 2 rooms. From previous experience, that opening could provide visual access to a cache. The cacher behaved as though the unseen competitor might possess useful information. This does not prove that ravens imagine another mind in the same detailed way humans do. The result supports a narrower and still remarkable conclusion. A raven can respond to another bird's possible viewpoint without relying on a visible gaze direction at that moment. The study also revealed a limit. As a group, the ravens did not reliably place their caches beyond the exact viewing angle of the open hole. They treated the opening as a possible source of observation, though they did not consistently calculate its precise geometric boundary. Their response was therefore sensitive and flexible without being perfect. This experiment gives the common raven its strongest lead so far. The bird protected hidden food according to an invisible relationship between a location and a possible observer. Its behavior depended on what another raven may have been able to see. Crow intelligence now returns in a different form, involving information that remains active for only a few seconds, while the bird compares what has changed. The raven's cache strategy depends on information that can remain useful for hours or days. Carrion crows have also been tested on a much shorter form of memory, lasting only a few seconds. This temporary system is called working memory, Working memory keeps selected information active long enough for an animal to compare it with something new or use it to guide an immediate choice. It differs from the long-term memory that allows an American crow to recognize a dangerous face years after an encounter. It also differs from the spatial memory that helps a raven return to hidden food after the surrounding ground has changed. Researchers studied working memory in 2 carrion crows, Corvus caron. A sample of 2 birds is very small. The results describe the abilities of those trained individuals and provide evidence worth testing in more crows. They cannot define the exact capacity of every member of the species. Before formal testing began, the 2 crows spent approximately 10 months learning how to use the equipment and respond correctly. The main task involved colored squares displayed on a screen. A crow first saw an array containing several squares, each placed in a particular position. The display then disappeared briefly. When it returned, one square had changed color. The bird had to identify the changed item by touching the correct place on the screen with its bill. Success required more than remembering that colored objects had appeared. The crow had to preserve enough detail about each item to compare the first display with the second. As the number of squares increased, the task placed a heavier load on working memory. 1 or 2 items could be retained with relatively high accuracy. Performance remained strong as more objects were added, then declined clearly between arrays containing 4 items and arrays containing 5. From this pattern, the researchers estimated a working memory capacity close to 4 items. That estimate was remarkably similar to results from rhesus monkeys tested with a closely matched version of the same task. The comparison does not mean that the crows and monkeys experienced the display in exactly the same way. Their eyes, brains, training histories, and response methods differed. The similar limit shows that 2 very different nervous systems can arrive at a comparable amount of temporary visual storage. Working memory has limited space because active information requires ongoing neural activity. A bird viewing 5 colored squares must preserve several details at once. Each item has a position and a color. When the display returns, the stored pattern must be checked against the new one before the memory begins to fade. Crow cognition can also move beyond remembering exact appearances. In other experiments, carrion crows learn to respond to relationships between objects. A bird might first see 2 identical shapes and later choose another pair that also matched. The new pair could use completely different colors or forms. The useful feature was the relationship of sameness. A different trial could require the crow to recognize that 2 items were unlike one another, and then select another unlike pair. This kind of task is called relational matching. It asks the animal to apply a rule across changing objects. The crow gains little from memorizing one exact picture because the shapes presented later may be unfamiliar. It must respond to the connection between them. These laboratory displays are far removed from a forest, roadside, or feeding ground. That distance makes the findings useful in a different way. The birds handled brief, artificial visual information without relying on a familiar human face, a hidden cache, or a natural tool. Their brains temporarily preserved several items and used a learned rule to guide a choice. The 2 crow sample leaves the broader species picture uncertain. Training also shaped their performance, and many wild crows would need time to understand the screen before their memory could be tested fairly. Even with those limits, the results reveal a form of mental work that is easy to overlook. For a few seconds, several colored locations remained active after they vanished from view. Holding a quantity inside working memory provides one foundation for a more unusual achievement. Carrion crows can also receive a numerical instruction and turn it into a controlled series of calls. Recognizing a quantity is different from producing one on command. Many animals can choose between two groups of food or notice when a group becomes larger. A carrion crow faces a more demanding task when it must create a requested number of actions and stop at the correct point. Researchers tested this ability in 3 carrion crows. The birds learned that certain visual symbols and recorded sounds represented quantities from 1 to 4. The cues were arbitrary. Their shape or sound did not naturally resemble the number they represented. Each crow had to learn the meaning through repeated training. After a cue appeared, the bird produced the matching number of calls. A signal for 2 required 2 vocalizations. A cue associated with 4 required the crow to call 4 times. Once the bird believed the sequence was complete, it pecked a confirmation target. That final peck told the researchers that the crow had finished deliberately, rather than simply pausing between calls. The task required several abilities to work together. The crow first had to identify the cue and retrieve its learned numerical meaning. That quantity then had to remain active in working memory. As each call was produced, the bird needed to monitor its progress and stop when the intended total had been reached. The 3 crows performed the task more accurately than random behavior would allow. They could respond to both visual and auditory instructions. A symbol seen on a screen and a sound heard through a speaker could therefore lead to the same numerical result. The calls themselves offered evidence about what happened before the sequence began. Researchers measured acoustic details such as duration, pitch, and the pattern of sound energy inside each vocalization. The first call differed according to the total number the crow was preparing to produce. By analyzing that opening sound, the researchers could predict whether the sequence was likely to contain 1 call or continue toward a larger number. This pattern suggests that the bird prepared the overall sequence before making its first sound. The result resembles planning on a very short timescale. A raven may preserve a tool for hours. Here, a crow organizes several actions across only a few seconds. The time span is shorter, while the need for internal control remains clear. Later calls also carried information about their position. The sound of a first call tended to differ from one produced near the end of a sequence. This position within an ordered series is called ordinal position. The word ordinal refers to order, such as first or fourth. Acoustic changes suggested that the crow's vocal system was tracking how far the sequence had progressed. Mistakes gave the researchers another view of that process. The bird sometimes produced too many calls or stopped too early. These errors followed patterns rather than appearing as completely random bursts of sound. A sequence could begin correctly and lose accuracy near its intended ending. Features within the calls helped researchers identify where that drift occurred. This does not mean the crows were using human number words. They were not performing written arithmetic or silently reciting a spoken counting list. Their achievement involved numerical production. An abstract cue was converted into a controlled amount of behavior. The crow selected a target quantity, carried it through a sequence, and marked completion with a separate peck. Such control may have useful foundations in natural life. A bird regularly encounters groups of companions, nestlings, rivals, and predators. Calls also unfold as ordered events rather than isolated sounds. The laboratory task revealed that a crow can bring quantity and vocal action under deliberate control when trained to connect them. A rough call can therefore contain more organization than its simple sound suggests. The sequence begins with a numerical goal already shaping the first vocal movement. Calls gain their widest meaning when other birds hear and respond to them. Crows and ravens live inside social systems that preserve knowledge in very different ways. A call becomes useful when another bird hears it, recognizes its meaning, and decides how to respond. For American crows, many of those exchanges happen inside a stable family. A breeding pair may remain on the same territory for years. Young crows often stay with their parents after they are fully grown. Some remain through an additional nesting season and help raise the next group of chicks. This arrangement is called cooperative breeding. An older sibling may carry food to the nest, watch for predators, or join the parents when an owl or hawk enters the territory. Several ages can therefore share the same patch of woodland, farmland, or suburb. That stability allows local information to remain within the family. Parents know which trees provide safe nest sites. Older offspring may remember where cats tend to appear, or which neighboring crows defend the next field. Juveniles watch how experienced birds react to familiar people, traffic, and feeding places. Alarm calls draw several family members toward the same threat. Mobbing behavior gives younger birds repeated chances to learn which animals deserve attention. Knowledge can accumulate over several seasons instead of disappearing when one breeding year ends. A common raven often develops inside a less settled social system. Adult ravens commonly form long-term pair bonds and defend a territory together. A pair may remain associated through many breeding seasons. Younger ravens that do not yet hold territories often travel in groups whose membership changes. Birds arrive at a carcass, separate later, and gather again around another food source. Scientists call this a fission-fusion system. Fission means that a group splits. Fusion means that individuals come together again. The members present can change from day to day. Life inside this moving network rewards careful social memory. A raven benefits from knowing which bird is dominant and which one tolerated its approach during an earlier encounter. Past theft matters around hidden food. Previous cooperation can influence whether another raven is treated as a useful partner or a likely rival. Young birds may also need to track which individuals are closely bonded, since challenging one raven can bring a response from its companion. Some raven abilities appear early. In one broad cognition study, 8 hand-raised common ravens were tested repeatedly from 4 months to 16 months of age. Their performance across many physical and social tasks was already strong at 4 months and changed relatively little during the later testing period. The result came from a small captive group, yet it suggests that important parts of raven cognition develop during the first months after leaving the nest. Raven communication can also involve visible gestures. Researchers observing wild ravens recorded birds picking up non-food objects such as moss, twigs, and small stones. A raven sometimes held an item where another bird could see it. In other cases, the object was offered directly. The bird, then waited for a response. This pause is called response waiting. It helps show that the action was directed toward a particular recipient rather than being ordinary object play. Researchers documented 38 showing and offering events involving 7 pairs of ravens. The receiving bird often looked toward the object and approached. Some exchanges were followed by gentle contact or shared handling of the item. Recipient attention mattered because a gesture has little social value when the other bird is looking away. These observations do not turn raven gestures into human language. They show that a raven can direct another bird's attention toward an object and monitor whether the signal has been noticed. The contrast between the two species now becomes clearer. American crow families preserve detailed local knowledge through stable relationships among parents, helpers, and younger siblings. Ravens often carry social information through long pair bonds and changing groups where rank, familiarity, and earlier encounters affect every approach. Both systems shape cognition from the outside. Relationships determine which memories remain useful and which signals deserve attention. Those relationships become harder to see when the number of birds grows from a family or pair into a gathering of hundreds or thousands. An American crow may spend the day inside a family territory and still join a much larger society before nightfall. As evening approaches, scattered birds begin moving along familiar flight corridors. A flight corridor is a commonly used route through the landscape. It may follow a river, a line of trees, a railway, or a chain of tall buildings. Families and feeding groups often pause at temporary gathering places known as staging grounds. Several dozen birds may arrive first. More appear from nearby fields and neighborhoods. The gathering grows through a steady sequence of local arrivals. Departure can spread in a similar way. A small cluster lifts from the staging ground and turns toward the roost. Nearby birds notice the movement and follow. Their departure prompts others to leave. Within a short period, a loose stream of crows may be moving in the same direction. The final destination is a communal roost, where many birds sleep within the same group of trees or urban district. This is a decentralized system. There is no evidence that one crow directs the entire movement. Each bird responds to conditions close at hand. It watches nearby crows, follows familiar routes, and adjusts when the group changes speed or direction. Thousands of individual decisions can produce an organized regional pattern. Scientists call this an emergent system. An emergent system is a large structure created by many small actions without a central planner designing the finished result. Communal roosting may provide several benefits at once. Many alert birds can detect an approaching owl sooner than one sleeping bird. A predator entering the roost also faces a large number of possible targets, reducing the risk carried by any single crow. Dense trees and sheltered city blocks can offer protection from strong winter wind. The gathering may also create opportunities to notice which birds arrived well fed or which direction successful foragers traveled from. Researchers continue to debate how much food information is actively shared at crow roosts. Collective vigilance and social contact remain visible even when that information exchange is difficult to measure. Common ravens gather around a different kind of center. A large carcass creates a temporary concentration of food. An adult territorial pair may discover it first and attempt to control access. Their ownership has limits when a group of younger, non-breeding ravens arrives. calls can attract additional birds to the area. These recruitment calls may help a lone young raven create enough group pressure to approach a resource defended by stronger adults. Numbers change the balance. Several birds can move toward the carcass from different directions. A defender chasing one intruder leaves another part of the food exposed. Lower-ranking ravens may wait near the edge and enter during a brief distraction. Others carry pieces away before the territorial pair regains control. Rank continues to matter inside the group. Dominant birds gain easier access, while familiar companions may tolerate one another at closer distances. The gathering changes as birds arrive, feed, depart, and return. Once the carcass is consumed or removed, the temporary social structure dissolves. Crow roosts repeatedly rebuild a regional night society. Raven gatherings rapidly reorganize access to a rare food source. Both patterns grow from local choices rather than central command. One crow follows a departing neighbor. One raven watches a defender turn away. Those small reactions combine with distance, hunger, memory, and social experience. The result becomes larger than the knowledge of any single participant. Intelligence now appears in the shape of the gathering itself. The most complex, changing environment encountered by either bird has been constructed by another species. Roads, buildings, waste systems, vehicles, and human schedules create a vast artificial landscape that corvids must learn to read. A city changes far more quickly than a bird species can change through evolution. 1 year brings a new building. The following season may remove a row of trees or close a familiar feeding site. Road repairs alter traffic, while garbage containers become harder to open. Artificial light extends activity after sunset and changes where insects gather. Crows respond to this moving environment through learning. An American crow living in a neighborhood can build years of knowledge about a small area. Certain people appear at similar times each morning. Garbage trucks follow regular weekly routes. School fields become quiet during weekends and busy again on Monday. Restaurant waste may appear after closing, while sprinklers bring worms closer to the surface before sunrise. The crow does not need to understand why these schedules exist. It learns the results they produce. Human faces also make the system more detailed. A person who has chased crows may trigger alarm calls long after the original encounter. Someone who leaves food can become associated with opportunity. Nearby family members hear the warnings and watch where experienced birds choose to land. Traffic creates a faster pattern. Vehicles stop, gather, and begin moving again. A crow may wait on a curb or utility line until a safer gap appears. Roads also produce food through spilled grain, discarded scraps, and animals struck by vehicles. Success depends on watching movement closely and leaving before the next car arrives. Seasonal roosts add another layer. Thousands of crows may sleep in trees near warm buildings and sheltered streets. If people remove branches, use loud sounds, or disturb the site repeatedly, the birds may shift several blocks away. The roost can reform around another group of trees, while the wider evening travel routes remain in use. Common ravens also learn from human systems, though their opportunities are often spread across greater distances. A raven flying over open country may notice vehicles slowing beside roadkill. Farm activity can expose animal feed or waste. Fishing docks leave scraps that appear according to boat schedules and cleaning routines. Campsites provide food during one season and become nearly empty during another. Landfills concentrate edible material, machinery, gulls, and other scavengers in one place. Ravens use the activity of surrounding animals as information. A gathering of birds can reveal hidden food. The movement of coyotes or wolves may point toward a carcass. Humans leaving a site can signal that food has become safer to approach. Roads connect these temporary opportunities across a broad landscape. Urban success should not be confused with tameness. A crow feeding beside a sidewalk may still keep several meters between itself and a person. Ravens visiting a landfill can remain alert to unfamiliar vehicles and sudden movement. Both species usually preserve an escape route even while taking advantage of human food. Their practical intelligence becomes clearest when an old pattern changes. A container that opened yesterday may be locked today. Construction can remove a familiar perch. A feeding person may stop appearing. Management crews can move waste, trim roost trees, or use frightening sounds. Behavioral flexibility allows the bird to use memory and fresh feedback to adjust. A failed approach becomes information. Repeated success strengthens a new routine. These same abilities can create conflict. Large crow roosts produce noise and droppings near homes or businesses. Ravens may scatter waste at landfills and campsites. Adult crows defending nests sometimes dive toward pedestrians who pass too close. Efforts to drive the birds away may work briefly, then lose strength as the animals learn that a harmless sound brings no real danger. The human landscape gives the American crow a strong advantage in reading repeated local systems. Common ravens show a different strength by linking temporary opportunities across roads, farms, and wide areas of open land. Each bird performs well where its memory and habits fit the structure of the problem. That pattern creates a serious difficulty for every intelligence test. The apparent winner may depend partly on which species entered a world that already matched its skills. Laboratory results often sound much larger after they leave the laboratory. A study involving a few carefully trained birds may later be described as though it settled the abilities of an entire species. The compound tool experiment began with 8 adult New Caledonian crows. 4 built working tools from 2 pieces. 1 bird, Mango. Later assembled tools containing 3 and 4 parts. The Raven peephole experiment used 9 birds in its main comparison. A broad cognition battery followed 8 hand-raised common ravens. The controlled vocal counting study involved 3 carrion crows. The working memory estimate near 4 items came from 2 carrion crows that had trained for about 10 months. Each result remains valuable. The small samples place a clear limit on how widely the findings can be applied. Individual birds differ in persistence, confidence, earlier experience, and interest in the reward. One especially determined animal may continue manipulating an apparatus after others lose interest. A cautious bird may understand part of a task while refusing to approach an unfamiliar object. Neophobia is the fear or hesitation caused by something new. High neophobia can make a capable wild bird appear unsuccessful during its first laboratory trials. Social rank also affects behavior. A lower-ranking raven may have extensive experience watching competitors and protecting food. A dominant bird may approach an apparatus more confidently because it is used to controlling space and resources. Age and sex can influence motivation, while hunger changes how strongly food guides a choice. Preference matters as well. A delayed reward offers little advantage when the bird does not value it much more than the immediate option. Captive research gives scientists control over many of these variables. The same object can be presented at the same distance under similar lighting. Barriers can be opened or closed. Reward visibility can change while the rest of the apparatus remains stable. This control helps identify which part of the setup influenced the response. Captive birds also tend to know human caretakers and experimental routines. Many have learned that approaching equipment usually produces food. A wild crow meeting the same box beside a road may keep its distance. Wild studies preserve natural behavior. The Seattle mask experiments followed free living crows inside familiar territories. Observations of raven caching occur around real competitors and food sources. These settings contain factors that researchers cannot fully control. A bird may react to a hidden predator, an earlier conflict, or a sound beyond the observer's hearing. The type of task also shapes the likely winner. A cache protection experiment fits the daily life of a common raven. Compound tool construction suits the natural technical background of a new Caledonian crow. Recognizing dangerous human faces gives American crows living around people a familiar kind of information. The apparatus offers certain possible actions. Scientists sometimes call these possibilities affordances. A hollow tube can receive a solid rod. An open peephole allows a view through a wall. A token can be carried and exchanged. The animal's body, training, and past experience determine which of these possibilities it notices. Researchers must also consider leaner explanations for impressive behavior. A raven choosing a future tool may represent a later event in a flexible way. Repeated learning may also connect one object with a familiar chain of actions that eventually brings food. Later scientific commentary raised this issue around the raven planning experiments. The birds clearly selected useful objects across delays reaching 17 hours. The evidence did not reveal every internal step that produced the choice. A similar caution applies to physical puzzles. Feedback can teach a crow that sinking objects move food upward without giving it a complete understanding of water displacement. Learning a dependable relationship remains a real mental achievement. The safest conclusion matches the strength of the evidence. An experiment samples behavior under design conditions. Its result grows from cognition combined with motivation, sensory access, previous training, and trust that the expected reward will appear. The setup reveals one part of the animal while leaving other abilities untouched. No collection of these studies supports a universal intelligence score. Together, they create something more useful, a clear profile showing where crows and ravens currently display their strongest advantages. The American crow and the common raven now return to the same comparison carrying very different records of success. The common raven currently holds the stronger case in several forms of individual strategic foresight. It protects hidden food according to who may have watched and whether a competitor had possible visual access. In the peephole experiment, 9 ravens changed their caching behavior when an unseen bird could potentially see through an open hole. Their response depended on the structure of the room and on earlier experience using that viewpoint themselves. Ravens also selected tools and exchange tokens for opportunities delayed by as much as 17 hours. The useful apparatus or human partner was absent when the object was chosen. A present choice was guided by a later event outside the bird's immediate sensory world. Competitive caching adds another layer. A raven remembers food locations, watches possible thieves, and may move a cache after its privacy has been reduced. Younger non-breeders also live within changing social groups where rank, earlier encounters, and temporary alliances affect access to food. Across these tasks, the common raven shows a strong ability to manage uncertain futures and hidden information. The American crow leads in a different collection of abilities. Wild crows around Seattle remembered a dangerous human face for years. Their response spread beyond the originally captured birds and traveled at least 1.2 kilometers at one study location. Family members and neighbors learned through alarm calls, mobbing, and repeated observation. This allowed information gained by a few individuals to become part of the local population's behavior. Cooperative family life strengthens that continuity. Older offspring may remain with a breeding pair and help feed or guard younger siblings. Several ages can share knowledge about nest sites, predators, territorial boundaries, and familiar people. Within towns and cities, American crows also learn repeated human patterns. Traffic gaps, feeding times, waste collection, and seasonal roost routes become dependable parts of a long-term local map. Large communal roosts are rebuilt through regional flight corridors, staging grounds, and clustered departures without a central leader. The American crow therefore has the clearer advantage in socially preserving local knowledge and reading dense human routines. The wider crow lineage expands the profile further. New Caledonian crows show the strongest technical specialization in this comparison. Their bill anatomy supports controlled tool handling, and wild birds shape plant materials for extracting hidden prey. In the compound tool study, 4 of 8 tested adults joined 2 pieces into a working tool. Mango later assembled tools from 3 parts and then 4. Carrion crows add evidence from more abstract laboratory tasks. The 2 birds in the working memory study retained approximately 4 colored items, with a clear decline when the load increased from 4 to 5. 3 other carrion crows learned to produce between 1 and 4 calls in response to arbitrary numerical cues. The sound of the first call predicted the intended sequence length. Relational matching studies also suggest that crows can respond to rules such as sameness or difference across changing objects. These findings do not create a victory for every species called crow. They show how widely technical and abstract abilities can develop within the crow side of the genus Corvus. The title question, therefore, has a qualified answer. The common raven currently presents the strongest evidence for individual strategic foresight. Its advantage appears most clearly when future opportunity, hidden food, possible observation, and changing competitors must be considered together. No defensible evidence shows that ravens are universally smarter than crows. The winner changes with the problem. Intelligence in these birds is best understood as a profile of information processing adaptations. Ecology determines which problems return often enough to reward a solution. Anatomy shapes which objects can be controlled. Development and social structure decide which knowledge remains useful and how it moves between individuals. Above a neighborhood, an American crow can watch familiar roads while carrying years of information about faces, schedules, family calls, and local history. Above open land, A common raven can travel with the remembered locations of food, the identities of competitors, the risk of theft, and the future usefulness of an object held in its bill. Each bird represents a complete form of corvid intelligence. Their close inheritance has been directed along different paths by the worlds they inhabit. The crow carries intelligence shaped by continuity. The raven carries intelligence shaped by uncertainty. Both remain among the most flexible minds ever carried into the air on black wings.